Hey, GW coming to you live. As I promised, I just got done watching Motel Hell, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it in case you guys haven't seen it. And it's a pretty crazy film, but it's going to appeal to people who like, excuse me, B level horror or, you know, sort of movies in the vein of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, this was released in 1980. So that was 1 year after I was born. And in the 80s, you had a big boom of slasher films, horror films set in motel. Slaughter Hotel, Motel Hell, Mountaintop Motel Massacre. I mean, there's probably others I don't know about. This one is actually pretty interesting because you really don't know what's going on with this film as far as it's just a very strange film. So let me try to describe it to you. This is the story of Vincent Smith, Bruce Smith, and Ida Smith, uh, played by Rory Calhoun, Paul Link, and Nancy Parsons. And basically, Vincent and Ida run a motel called Motel Hello. They are brother and sister. You will find that out at the later part of the movie. We're in the middle. They kind of mention it. Terry is played by Nina Axelrod. She's a pretty cool, cute, hot blonde. Basically, she gets roped into the story because, see, the character of Vincent is not all innocent. In order to keep his meat business going, he has the motel business and basically kills the people that go into the motel in one way or another. So Terry's boyfriend in the film gets killed at the beginning, and she kind of becomes the sort of, I don't want to say, it's like an orphan situation. The boyfriend dies, so Terry comes over, and Vincent and Ida help her get back on her feet, and they want her to take over the meat business. Bruce Smith is actually Vincent Smith's younger brother, who is actually a cop. So you know how that goes. Anything that Vincent does, he could potentially cover it up, murders and so forth. What makes this film different than I think most slashers of this caliber is that it's, I don't want to say a down home sort of deal, but it's slow, but it's very strange. In order to keep Vincent's meats going, which are referenced in the film, obviously, uh, they have a special technique of harvesting meat, and really no explanation is given to why Vincent is doing all the killing, except there's more people and not enough food. Now you'll get that synopsis at the end. This film is pretty slow, but you also have to keep your eye on it because there is a pop-up cameo, you guys. Because in the '80s, you had the movie House. You guys remember that was William Catt and George Wendt. George Wendt was also on Cheers. Coincidentally, John Ratzenberger, who played Cliff Clavin, the mailman, is in this. He plays a member of a group called Ivan and the Terribles. And Wolfman Jack is in this. Now, if you guys don't know who he is, he was a big-time radio DJ. And you can hear him on American Graffiti. Well, you get to see him here. He plays Reverend Billy. Reverend Billy is seen on the TV set of Vincent and Ida's in their hotel room, played constantly. So every time you see the hotel room, you see the religious, programming, and Wolfman Jack is usually on there. Excuse me. This film does take cues from such films as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and what's the other one? Slaughterhouse. But I think Slaughterhouse was released in '85. Um, the technique, the way that Farmer Vincent kills people in this, it's not, there's a lot more implied violence than there actually is. And you will never forget after you guys watch this, you guys will never forget the secret garden. You guys will never forget um, Farmer Vincent himself. Because Rory Calhoun, who plays Farmer Vincent, is actually very, very, very good at portraying this character. This character, you guys, is an ordinary farmer, and you see him feed the pigs and, you know, really act like a good guy. But when it comes to how dedicated he is, he can snap at any moment. The other thing this thing kind of took was the climax of the film. Um, the climax of the film is actually relevant to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, where you have a chainsaw duel. The one thing that differs from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 to this film is that the chainsaw duel done in this film, I think, is a lot more, it's filmed better. It's actually very, very more intense, I think. Motel Hell, like I said, is B movie level, and it is very, very cool, actually. And Kevin Conner was the director of this thing back in 1980. And Nancy Parsons, I double checked, was Mrs. Balbreaker on Porky's. So it's interesting to see her in another role, sort of more sinister, I guess, than the principal. That's also like that other movie, American Gothic, with Yvonne DiCarlo. Everybody knows Yvonne DiCarlo as Lillian Munster. But when you watch her on American Gothic, she is a very psychotic individual. She's also on another movie with the Rottweiler, and I can't remember that name of the movie, but I have it. But it's this movie is pretty good. It's actually a satire. You could look at it like a satire of 80s slasher movies. Um, and it's a fun movie if you give it the time. Now there's a little bit of blood and gore in it, but not nothing overtly crazy. I think there's more nudity in this film than anything because Nina Axelrod apparently in her contract got naked as many times as she can. So there is, strips of full frontal. When Terry and Bruce, the characters, go to the drive-in, you get to see a flash of half a second of full frontal, and I mean full frontal, which is very rare. But the cardinal rule, there's always nudity in horror films to give you a break from the blood and gore. The problem is there wasn't that much blood and gore. It was more the nature of the story. You know what I mean? This was put out by United Artists back in the day. They actually, I think they put out Rocky 4 later on, in the company career. But it's not a bad movie. It's one of those ones that you'll probably bypass. If you see it, you'll go, nothing crazy, turn it off. But actually, it's not bad. It's actually mysterious, and the cool thing about this movie is they never reveal. There's no revelation on the process to get perfect meat. I mean, you just see them in different stages, and you're supposed to put it together, and it's very, very interesting. The other thing that you will notice is there's a picnic scene in this toward the very middle of the film, toward the second act, if you will, where they reflect on the backstory of how they came to be, how to take care of meat. Now, one thing too, Nancy Parsons' character Ida, before I go into it, was one of the most memorable psychotic people in film because she already looks menacing to begin with. And anybody who's seen Porky's knows her face and, she's recognizable. They gave her a psychotic edge, and you never know what the character is going to do next. And she plays off perfectly with Rory Calhoun. I mean, they must have got together and really, had some fun playing these characters. The movie is about an hour and 45 minutes long. I do see that MGM bought it, which probably means it's on MGM Plus if you guys want to check it out there. If not, definitely get the 4K version. Now, it won't make anything pop, but some of the colors, do pop out quite a bit. They're very bright. They're very, pretty cool. Now, Kevin Connor, who directed this film, had done From Beyond the Grave and At Earth's Core. Now, I'd never seen either one of those films. But it puts a whole new spin on me. And one of the most frightening aspects of this film is that, this could happen anywhere. Down south where there's nothing but fields and corn and everybody's on meat, this could have potentially been, something. But it's pretty interesting to see a B-level movie that is this recognized. And I remember the first time I saw this film was on Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs. And I was just like, I didn't give it the appreciation it deserved. I went, huh? Like, what is this? A Texas Chainsaw rip without the actual violence? I mean, a Texas Chainsaw Light. But when I watched it just now, there's a lot to it. And this is actually a fun movie, if nothing else. And like I said, probably rated R for more nudity than anything. And there's a lot of story in here too, which you don't find, I guess, you didn't find in horror movies in the 80s in that time. They were just more like kill, 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 whatever. But there is some story down there, and it's a slow burn picture, but if you give it the time, it definitely turns out to be a fun movie to watch. So look, guys, I know I look burned out, and I'm just glad I gave you that review. Check out MGM. If not, definitely take it from me. This is one of the most interesting films to come out of the 80s, and I think it pretty much set the tone. And a lot of people are going to wonder what happened at the very end of this film. I did read up on it on Google just to see, because at the end you don't really see anything. You just see the Motel Hello sign just pop into Motel Hell and everything explodes. And the implication is that the hotel was set on fire and burned to the ground. But then that leaves the question, okay, if that were the case, did the secret garden die too? And once you see this garden, you won't forget. But this film could have had a sequel to it pretty easily. I'm kind of glad it didn't, because story-wise, I don't know where you could go with this at the end of this film. But the chainsaw duel is probably the standout part. Also, the way that this was shot very good. It was really cool. Some of the camera angles, obviously, I'm a big fan of that stuff, was really cool. And definitely, like I said, you will never forget Ida. You will never forget the Motel Hello. And you will never forget the chainsaw duel at the end of the picture, which I thought was done very, very well. And Nina Axelrod, obviously, you will not forget her. Now, I don't know what she's done. I know she's done a couple other things, but I don't know what she's done, but maybe we'll check it out later. But she's definitely, was definitely the star of the show next to Rory and Nancy. So Motel Hell, I'm giving 7 out of 10. Purely based on the fact that if done again, if this movie was redone, they would probably have more gore in this, and I would keep the dark humor. But definitely check it out. It's definitely worth a watch, and I'd recommend watching it in the morning before anything goes on. Like I said, the first time I saw it was on Joe Bob Briggs' Monster Vision, and I stayed up till I think 1:30 in the morning watching this. But I had forgotten about it, and it's definitely an underrated horror gem, and that's what I got to say about Motel Hell. So please check into Motel Hell. You might actually have a good time.